Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all having a great week. Today we're diving into a wild story from Reddit updates, and trust me, you don't want to miss this one. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and let's get right into it. I found a locked safe in my new house. Inside was $47,000 in cash and a note that said, "Don't look in the attic." I looked in the attic. The house was a foreclosure, the kind of place that sits on the market for 8 months because the photos make it look like a crime scene waiting to happen. Peeling wallpaper in the hallway, a kitchen that hadn't been updated since the Carter administration, a bathroom with a pink toilet that I actually kind of loved in a twisted way. But it was cheap enough that a 28-year-old freelance graphic designer with $23,000 in student loan debt and a credit score that looked like a golf score could actually afford it. The bank wanted it off their books. I wanted walls that were mine. We made a disgusting kind of sense together. The previous owner was a woman named Margaret Holloway. She died in a nursing home 6 months before the listing went up. No children, no surviving spouse, just a niece in Sacramento who'd signed the paperwork and washed her hands of the whole affair. The house had been Margaret's for 43 years. You could feel that weight in every room, the accumulated density of a life lived in one place, the way the floorboards had settled into the exact pattern of her footsteps, the ghost impressions in the carpet where furniture had stood for decades and then been abruptly removed. I closed on a Tuesday. By Saturday, I was sleeping on an air mattress in the living room because the bedroom smelled like old perfume and something else I couldn't identify, something sweet and cloying that made my throat tight. I told myself it was just the heat, the August humidity seeping into everything. I told myself a lot of things that first week. The safe was in the basement. I'd been down there exactly once before buying the place during the inspection, and I'd been so focused on the water heater and the foundation cracks that I'd completely missed it. It was built into the wall behind a workbench that looked like it had been assembled from scrap wood during the Reagan administration. The bench was covered in mason jars, hundreds of them, filled with what I thought at first were preserves but turned out to be layers of sediment, dirt, sand, something that looked like dried algae, carefully stratified like geological samples. Margaret had been a hobbyist geologist, apparently, or a hoarder with a very specific aesthetic. I only found the safe because I was trying to move the workbench. I wanted to put my washer and dryer down there, and the bench was blocking the only spot with the right plumbing hookups. Took me 20 minutes to clear the jars, carrying them up to the kitchen one armload at a time, my biceps screaming, my mind wandering to whether I could sell them on Etsy as vintage curiosity cabinet specimens. When the bench was finally clear, I saw the metal faceplate set into the cinderblock wall about 2 feet square, with a combination dial that looked like it belonged on a submarine. I sat on the basement steps for a long time, staring at it. I thought about calling a locksmith. I thought about calling the niece in Sacramento, though we'd only spoken once and she'd sounded eager to never think about this house again. I thought about the fact that I had exactly $340 in my checking account and no furniture and a job that paid me in 30-day net terms. And here was this safe, this secret, this thing that had been waiting for someone to find it. I tried Margaret's birthday first. Nothing. The day she bought the house, which I'd found in the property records. Nothing. Her husband's death date, which was on a memorial card I'd found in a kitchen drawer. Nothing. I was about to give up, to accept that I'd need professional help or a crowbar, when I noticed the numbers scratched into the underside of the workbench. Faint, almost invisible, the kind of thing you'd only see if you were lying on your back in a basement at 11 p.m. with a flashlight between your teeth because the single bulb down there had burned out and you were too stubborn to go buy a new one. 12:23:47, December 23, 1947. I didn't know what it meant. I turned the dial anyway. The safe opened with a sound like a sigh. Inside was money. Stacks of it bundled with paper bands that crumbled when I touched them, the rubber bands beneath them cracked and fossilized. Hundreds mostly, though there were 50s and 20s mixed in, all of it old, the kind of bills that feel different from modern currency, thicker and more substantial, like they were printed on fabric instead of paper. I counted it 3 times because I couldn't believe the number, $47,320, in a house I'd bought for $92,000, in a safe behind a workbench covered in dirt jars. And beneath the money, a single sheet of notebook paper, the kind with blue lines and 3 holes punched along the side. The handwriting was shaky, the pen pressure uneven, like it had been written by someone very old or very sick or both. Don't look in the attic, that was all. No explanation, no context, no enjoy the money or this is for my niece or burn this house to the ground. Just 4 words underlined twice with a period at the end that had been pressed so hard it nearly tore through the paper. I took the money upstairs. I spread it on the living room floor like a terrible carpet and I lay on my air mattress and I stared at it until my eyes burned. I thought about all the things I could do, pay off my loans. Buy a car that didn't make a sound like a dying cat. Replace the pink toilet. Sleep in a real bed. I thought about Margaret, alone in this house for 43 years, hiding this money, writing this note, dying in a nursing home with no one to tell her secrets to. I thought about the attic. The attic access was in the hallway ceiling, a square panel with a pull cord that I hadn't touched since moving in. I'd looked up at it a few times, told myself I'd investigate eventually, maybe use it for storage, maybe find some vintage clothes I could sell. But I'd been busy, I'd been overwhelmed, I'd been making excuses. At 2 a.m. I was standing on a kitchen chair in the hallway, my fingers wrapped around the pull cord, my heart doing something complicated in my chest. The money was still on the living room floor. The note was in my pocket. I kept hearing Margaret's voice in my head, though I'd never met her, never heard her speak, an imagined voice, reedy and urgent, saying, don't. But I'd already found the safe. I'd already taken the money. The transaction was complete, the secret half revealed. How could I stop now? The panel came down with a shower of dust and insulation fragments that made me cough for 5 minutes. The ladder was built into the frame, aluminium rungs that unfolded with a series of metallic groans. I climbed up into darkness, into heat, into a smell that hit me like a physical thing, not the old perfume sweetness of the bedroom, but something else entirely. Something organic, something wrong. I found the light switch by feel, my hand sliding along a wooden beam until it connected with a metal toggle. A single bulb flickered on, bare, hanging from a twisted wire. The attic ran the full length of the house, a long triangle of space under the roof, the ceiling sloping down to meet the floor at angles that would make standing impossible in the corners. It was packed with things. Boxes, trunks, furniture draped in white sheets that turned them into ghost shapes in the dim light. A dressmaker's dummy with no head, a stack of picture frames, their backs turned to me, their contents hidden. A rocking horse with real horsehair that had gone gray with dust and time. And in the center of it all, beneath the peak of the roof where the ceiling was highest, a bed. A real bed, not a cot or a pallet but a four-poster with a canopy, the kind of thing you'd see in a museum or a movie about Victorian hysteria. It was made up with sheets and pillows, the linens yellowed but intact, and on the pillow lay a brush, a silver hairbrush with a handle shaped like a mermaid, the bristles full of long white hairs. I should have left then. I know that now. I should have climbed back down the ladder, sealed the attic, spent my money, and never thought about Margaret Holloway again. But I didn't. I walked toward the bed, my feet finding paths between boxes and trunks, my hand reaching out to touch the brush, to touch the pillow, to touch the sheets that still held the faint impression of a body. The sheets were warm, not warm from the August heat, though the attic was stifling, but warm in a specific way, a concentrated way, like someone had just gotten up from them. Like someone had been lying there while I was in the basement, while I was counting money, while I was climbing the ladder with my heart in my throat. I jerked my hand back and the brush fell to the floor with a sound that was too loud, that echoed in the strange acoustics of the attic space. That's when I heard the breathing, not my own. I'd stopped breathing actually, my lungs frozen, my throat closed around a scream that couldn't find its way out. This was other breathing, slow and regular, coming from behind me, from the direction of the attic entrance, from the top of the ladder that I knew I had just climbed alone. I turned around. The light was bad, the single bulb casting everything in harsh shadows, but I could see the shape at the top of the ladder. Small, hunched, white hair that caught the light like a halo or a warning. Margaret. It had to be Margaret, though Margaret was dead, though she'd died in a nursing home, though I'd bought her house from a niece who'd never mentioned anything about her aunt still being here, still being anywhere. "You're not supposed to be here," the shape said, and the voice was exactly like I'd imagined, reedy and urgent, but also something else. Tired, so tired. No one is supposed to be here, that's what the note was for, that's what the money was for. To keep you away, to keep you satisfied, to keep you out. I found my voice, though it didn't sound like mine, too high and too thin. "Mrs. Holloway, you're dead," the niece said. "The niece doesn't know anything. The niece took the first check I sent her and stopped asking questions 20 years ago." The shape moved forward into the light, and I saw that it was a woman, very old, impossibly old, her skin like paper that's been folded too many times, her eyes the color of water that's been sitting in a glass for days. She was wearing a nightgown that might have been white once, that was now the color of old teeth, and her feet were bare and blue-veined on the dusty attic boards. "I'm not dead, I just needed to be somewhere else for a while. The nursing home was convenient, the paperwork was easy, I've done it before, I'll do it again, but I always come back here, this is my house, this has always been my house." I looked at the bed, at the brush, at the warm sheets. "You've been living up here for 6 months? Longer than that, dear, much longer." She smiled, and her teeth were perfect, too perfect, dentures obviously, but the smile itself was worse than any natural expression could have been. It was the smile of someone who had been alone for a very long time, who had forgotten how smiles were supposed to work. "I was born in this house. I was married in this house. My husband died in the basement, right behind that workbench, and I buried him in the garden because I couldn't bear to let him leave. The safe was his, the money was his. He was a banker, you see, before he retired. He liked to have cash on hand, he liked to be prepared. I thought of the jars on the workbench, the geological samples, the layers of dirt and sand. I thought of the garden, which I'd looked at once and decided needed to be completely redone, the overgrown roses and the patch of unusually lush grass near the back fence. The note, I said, don't look in the attic. You wanted me to find the money but not find you. I wanted you to take the money and leave. I wanted you to think the house was haunted or cursed or simply too strange to live in. I wanted you to break the contract, forfeit the deposit, let the bank take it back. I've done it before. The family before you, the young couple with the baby, I left them $52,000. They lasted 3 weeks. The single man before that, the one who worked nights, I left him $31,000. He made it 6 days. You're the first one to actually come up here, the first one to look. She tilted her head, bird-like curious. Why? Why would you look? The money was enough. The money is always enough. I didn't have an answer, or I had too many answers, because I was curious, because I was stupid, because I'd spent my whole life looking in attics metaphorically, poking at secrets, picking at scabs, unable to leave anything alone. Because some part of me, the part that had counted the money 3 times, that had imagined paying off my loans and buying a car and sleeping in a real bed, had known that the money wasn't the real secret. The money was the distraction. The attic was the truth. What's in the garden? I asked, because I had to ask something, because the silence was stretching too long, because I could feel her looking at me with those watercolored eyes, and I needed to fill the space with words. Besides your husband, what else is in the garden? Margaret's smile changed. It became real or real adjacent, the expression of someone who had been waiting for a particular question and was pleased to finally receive it. Everything, she said. Everyone. My mother, who told me I was too plain to marry. My father, who proved her wrong by finding me a husband who didn't care about plainness, who only cared about the house, about the land, about the things that came with me. My husband, who loved the house more than he loved me, who died rather than leave it. The babies. The 3 babies who never breathed, who I buried before they could be buried by strangers, who I visit every morning with a cup of tea and a hairbrush because hair is the last thing to decay. Did you know that? The hair lasts forever. I brush their hair, I brush my hair. I wait for someone to find me, to really find me, and now you have. She took another step toward me, and I saw that she was holding something in her hand, something she'd picked up from a box or a trunk, or perhaps had been holding all along. The silver hairbrush, the mermaid handle, the bristles full of white hairs that might have been hers and might have been someone else's. You can keep the money, she said. You can keep the house. I don't need them anymore. I've been waiting for someone to take my place, you see, someone who understands about looking, about needing to know. The attic needs a new keeper. The garden needs new stories. I've been here so long, dear, so very long. I'm ready to be in the garden myself. I'm ready to have my hair brushed. I ran. I know that sounds cowardly, and maybe it was, but I ran, shoving past her, feeling her papery skin brush against my arm, feeling the hairbrush catch on my sleeve, hearing it clatter to the floor as I threw myself at the ladder, down the rungs, not caring about the bruises on my shins, the splinters in my palms. I hit the hallway floor and I kept running, through the living room where the money still lay in terrible profusion, through the kitchen, out the back door into the overgrown garden with its roses and its patch of lush grass near the fence. I didn't stop until I was at the street, until I could see my car, until I could feel the neighbor's porch light on me like a spotlight, like a rescue. I stood there in my socks, my chest heaving, my phone in my hand though I didn't remember pulling it out, and I looked back at the house. The attic window was dark, the house was silent. The garden was just a garden, overgrown and sad and completely ordinary. I called the police. I know that sounds like the logical thing to do, but it wasn't logic, it was panic. It was the need to make someone else responsible for what I'd seen, what I'd heard, what I was still trying to convince myself I hadn't imagined. I told them there was an intruder. I told them the previous owner was in the house. I told them about the attic, the bed, the hairbrush, the warm sheets. The dispatcher was patient. The officers who arrived were less so. They found the attic empty. The bed was there, the dressmaker's dummy, the rocking horse, the boxes and trunks and sheet-draped furniture. But no Margaret, no warm sheets. The pillow was cold, they told me when I insisted. The brush was on the floor where I'd dropped it, but there were no hairs in it, white or otherwise. The money in the living room was real, at least. They counted it, documented it, told me I'd need to talk to the bank about whether it was legally mine or belonged to the estate. They suggested I stay somewhere else for the night. They suggested I might want to talk to someone about stress, about the pressures of home ownership, about the way old houses could play tricks on the mind. I stayed in a Motel 6 that night. I lay on a bed that smelled like industrial cleaner, and I stared at the ceiling, and I tried to convince myself that they were right, that I'd imagined it. That the heat and the stress and the isolation had combined to create a hallucination that felt real, because I needed it to feel real, because some part of me wanted the house to be more than just a cheap foreclosure. Wanted my life to be more than just student loans and freelance gigs and air mattresses on living room floors. But I couldn't, because when I finally fell asleep around 4 a.m., I dreamed of Margaret. Not the attic Margaret, not the papery skin thing with the watercolored eyes, but a younger version. A Margaret in a white dress standing in a garden full of roses, brushing the hair of 3 small shapes that lay at her feet. Brushing and brushing while the roses grew over everything, over the shapes, over her dress, over her face, until there was nothing left but the sound of the brush and the smell of something sweet and cloying that made my throat tight. I went back to the house the next morning. I know, every horror movie, every ghost story, every piece of common sense says don't go back, but I had to. The money was there. My name was on the deed. And more than that, more than any practical concern, I needed to know. I'd always needed to know. That was the truth about me, the truth that Margaret had recognized, the truth that had made me climb the ladder when the note told me not to. The attic was exactly as the police had described. Empty, dusty, the bed stripped of sheets that I could have sworn were there the night before. I searched through the boxes, the trunks, the sheet-draped furniture. I found photo albums full of people I didn't recognize, wedding pictures from the 50s, a baby book with 3 names written in it and 3 dates of death, all within days of birth. I found geological survey maps of the property, marked with X's in the garden, in the basement, in the walls. I found a journal, Margaret's journal, written in the same shaky hand as the note, filled with entries about waiting, about watching, about the families who came and went, the money that kept them satisfied, the attic that kept her hidden. I am the house, she'd written on a page near the end, the paper stained with something brown that might have been tea or might have been something else. I have always been the house, I will always be the house. The house is hungry and I am its mouth. The house is patient and I am its waiting. Find me if you can, keep me if you dare, brush my hair when I am still, plant me in the garden when I am done. I don't live in the house anymore, I tried for 3 weeks. I spent the money on my loans, on a car, on a bed that I put in the bedroom where the old perfume smell gradually faded into something else. Something that smelled like me, like my shampoo, my laundry detergent, my life. I told myself I was being practical. I told myself Margaret was dead, really dead, that the attic was empty, that the police had checked, that I was safe. But I kept finding things. A silver hairbrush in my bathroom drawer, though I'd never bought a silver hairbrush. White hairs on my pillow in the morning, though my hair is brown. The sound of breathing that wasn't mine, late at night, when the house settled and the floorboards made their Margaret patterns. And the dreams, always the dreams, the garden and the roses and the brushing that never stopped. I moved out on a Tuesday, exactly 3 months after I'd moved in. I left the furniture, the bed, the car, and the driveway. I told the bank they could have it back, that I'd forfeit, that I didn't want any money, that I just wanted to be gone. I moved to an apartment on the other side of the city, a new building with no attic, no basement, no garden, no history. I changed my phone number. I stopped doing freelance work and got a job at a coffee shop where the worst secret anyone had was whether they were sleeping with the manager. But I still dream about her, about the house. About the garden with its lush patch of grass near the fence. And sometimes when I'm half asleep, when the line between dreaming and waking is thinnest, I feel it, the brush, the silver mermaid handle. The bristles moving through my hair, through hair that isn't brown anymore, that has gone white overnight, that keeps growing and growing while I lie in my apartment bed and listen to the breathing that isn't mine and know, finally know. That you can't outrun a house, can't outrun a story, can't outrun the thing that recognizes you, that chooses you, that waits for you to climb the ladder and look in the attic and take your place in the bed with the warm sheets and the yellowed pillows. The new owners moved in last month, a young couple with a baby. I saw the listing online, the same photos from before, the peeling wallpaper, the pink toilet, the workbench in the basement. I drove by once, told myself it was just curiosity, just closure, just making sure the house was still there, still ordinary, still nothing special. But I saw them through the window, the young couple, and I saw the way they looked at each other, the way they held the baby, the way they didn't know yet about the safe or the money or the note. I thought about warning them. I thought about knocking on the door and telling them everything about the attic and the garden and the hair that lasts forever. But I didn't, because I know how this story goes. I know that some people look and some people don't, and the ones who look are the ones who stay, who keep the house fed, who brush the hair and wait for the next ones to come. I know that Margaret is in the garden now, really in the garden, her hair growing through the lush grass near the fence, her brushing done, her waiting finally over. And I know that I'm in the attic, not physically, not yet. But in the dreams, in the half-waking moments, in the feeling of the brush and the sound of the breathing and the smell of old perfume, and something sweet and cloying that makes my throat tight. I'm in the attic and the attic is in me and the house is patient and the house is hungry and I have always been the house and I will always be the house and someday when I'm old and paper-skinned and ready to be still, someone will find me there. In the warm sheets with the silver brush in my hand, waiting for the next one to look, to need to know, to climb the ladder and take their place in the story that has no ending, only waiting, only brushing. Only the garden growing over everything until there is nothing left but the sound and the smell and the house, always the house, forever the house. I still have the note, I keep it in my wallet, folded small, the 4 words worn soft from handling. Don't look in the attic. I look at it sometimes in the coffee shop between customers when the espresso machine is hissing and the milk is steaming and everything smells like beans and burnt sugar instead of old perfume and decay. I look at it and I think about what I would do differently, whether I would take the money and run, whether I would burn the house down, whether I would simply never have bought it, never have needed walls that were mine, never have been the kind of person who looks in attics, who needs to know, who can't leave the safe unopened or the ladder unclimbed. But I know the truth, I knew it then and I know it now, I would always have looked, I will always look. It's what I am. It's what the house needs, it's what the story requires. Don't look in the attic, but you will, you always do. I hope you're all doing well today. I've got a really interesting story lined up for you from Reddit updates. If this is your first time here, consider subscribing so you don't miss out on future stories.